Today, we'll be focusing on a particular kind of Chinese influencers, young women on Chinese social media who make videos about living their lives alone. Using the Chinese term for influencer, which is Wanghong, meaning internet red, people call them living alone Wanghong. Now, I'm your host, Walter Lee, and today's guest is Dr. Jia Guo, an early career researcher currently working in the University of Wollongong, Australia. Welcome to the show, Dr. Jia.
Hello, Walter. Hello, everyone. It's so nice to be back to this podcast.
Yes, it's nice to have you back. And yes, for people who don't remember, Gia was on the podcast earlier I think it was either season one or season two. I can't quite remember. I think it might have been the earlier seasons. But it's
Season two.
great. Yes, it's great to
Yeah.
have you back in the podcast with me today. Now, uh, let's get straight into the questions, I think, because you have a very important topic to talk about. Now, in your paper, you talk about the term leftover women in China. Now, for those who don't know, can you please elaborate more for us on why you think that this is an important thing to talk about and raise awareness of?
Yes, of course. So the term leftover women, or in Chinese, 剩女, is apparently not a good term. So it's a derogatory label used in China to describe women who remain unmarried into their late 20s or beyond. So these women are often educated and have professional jobs. So the implication of the term is these women are too picky or self-pity and failed to their parents and further to the society. So the term is apparently deeply tied to traditional patriarchal family norms and also the Chinese state's concerns about reproduction and social stability. Although in recent years, many official and mainstream media discourses stopped using the term, but the implication is apparently still ongoing. So it is important to talk about 剩女 or leftover women because it shows how women's bodies and life choices become objects of social discipline. But of course, at the same time, there are many young women, Chinese women, who refuse and resistant such a stigmatized label. So this tension is important and sets the stage for understanding why alternative representations have become so popular on Chinese social media. For example, the kind of influencers I studied here.
Yes, yes. The term leftover women does not seem like a very nice term at all.
No.
It's something that I think should be maybe changed to a bit more inclusive rather than being left over. That's quite yeah, not a great name at all. But can you introduce us to a bit more about living alone, Wang Hong? Now, living alone to many, actually doesn't seem to be a negative thing, but according to your observation, like, can you tell us about what content is shown in their videos? And is it like a negative or a positive spin in some ways? Like living alone for me, I mean, I like to live alone, but some people, could see it as a negative thing.
Yeah, so just under the stigma of leftover women living alone for women who, are in the late 20s or early 30s or even like beyond, apparently is not a good sign. But of course, however, the living alone Wang Hong, these influencers kind of turn that narrative around. So there are this group of Chinese influencers online who post videos about their daily lives living alone. Of course, there are, male creators make this kind of like content, but popular creators who have larger fan base are usually young women. So their videos most focus on domestic routines, coming home after work, cooking, cleaning, exercising, doing their skincare, relaxing, just enjoy the quiet evenings. So visually, these videos from these young women influencers are calm, aesthetic and immersive. So they often show their very well designed apartments and their quality, home devices and expensive skincare products and so on. So in terms of the content, I do summarize three themes of this video. So the first is economic independence. So
Hmm.
these influencers usually show they earn very good money, they have certain financial security. And the second is self-care and self-discipline. They just take care of themselves.
Hmm.
And the third is what I call enjoyable loneliness. Like you said, like
Hmm.
they do show just living alone is a way they can find freedom, peace, and also pleasure in life.
Hmm. Yeah, I think though, like for if mainly the influencers who are doing this are young women, it could also be a dangerous thing as well, like for people to know that this person lives alone and uh, there is certain like in Korea, it's not unsafe to live alone, but for definitely there's a higher chance of, people who are stalkers that will prey on younger women who live alone because they know that they don't have like help or anything like that. So I think that living alone, Wanghong could face some difficulties, especially if they have obsessive fans and find out where they live. Hopefully, they're very wise with how they create their content and don't show exactly where they live or be a bit more discreet on, which apartment they're in or etc. etc. But
Yeah.
so how does these type of influences and their content challenge the stigma surrounding leftover women?
Yeah, so actually these influencers, according to my observation, they like highly professional. So they wouldn't show any of, the information or address or anything they in their content.
Mm,
But like the authenticity of these influencers, like, do you really live here? Or this is
mm,
just your work space, right, to create this kind of content? So this question is actually out of my research scope.
mm,
But my focus is still just to say the like self-representation, like what it means to this kind of gender norms or gender order in China in the digital culture. So yes, your question, how does the content challenge the stigma surrounding leftover women is definitely one of my focuses. Just because these videos frame women's singleness as a choice, so not as a social problem to be fixed, like the 剩女 discourse indicates. So they frame women being single as a pathway to a happy, free, and high quality life. So instead of portraying single women as lonely or anxious to find the one, so these influencers show themselves as financially secure, emotionally fulfilled, and
mm.
living comfortable life. So marriage is no longer positioned for women as a solution to insecurity. So in fact, many of these videos subtly and a lot of of them sometimes explicitly suggest that marriage limits women's freedom, while singleness enables autonomy, peace, and also self realization. So I do think this kind of like content challenge the show news stigma, but by creating this counter narratives to the idea that women must marry to be whole and to be happy.
Yes, and that's definitely not the case. I think, though, the government in Korea, for instance, the government are pushing couples to get married. They're giving them very much, a lot of incentive to get married, a lot of monetary incentive. I think this day and age, this generation understands that sometimes marriage isn't always the answer, and sometimes that people are allowed to live alone or not even have to get
Yeah,
married or decide
yeah,
to have life partners. And I think, yeah, though me being a happily married person, I do not think that you should be forced to get married or think that the only way to happiness is marriage because I don't think that is the situation at all. I think that you can possibly live a very happy life with yourself and self-love and being able to uh, do things out of freedom because within marriage there are, I wouldn't say restrictions or less freedom, but there are things that you should consider. So you can't just spontaneously go on a solo trip, or you can't do any of that kind of stuff like you can when you're single. But yes, I argue that being single is doesn't mean that you're not going to be happy. Now, as you argue in your paper, these videos are also shaped by social media's commodity culture. Can you tell us more about to this point?
Uh, this is like the central tension, right? Like, or like to understand these influences. Of course, like you said, like China is a lot of parts, right? The culture part is very similar to Korea. The young generation, especially young women, so they do have this kind of feminist sentiments to say, oh, I don't want get married. I want to, stay single. I don't want to go into this kind of patriarchal, traditional family, this like pathway. But at the same time, so this of course is a good thing. But at the same time, I do think this influencers, this living alone Wanghong, they also in their videos repackage women's singleness as a consumer lifestyle. So these influencers, these individuals are mostly, very young, pretty, so they uphold a certain normative femininity. And their like discourse about economic independence is usually like showing through income disclosure, home ownership, and more importantly, consumption. So, self-care has a very thin line between self-care and self-discipline. So self-care is shown through branded fitness clothes, expensive skincare products and supplements, and also, of course, these creators usually have sponsored products in their living alone videos. Um, Even like loneliness becomes enjoyable because it is softened by the material comfort. So in this way, empowerment for women is framed as something women can achieve through assumption and self-management. All the structural issues, for example, workplace discrimination that women face in China and of course in a lot of other societies, just seem not existing anymore. Instead, all these kind of social issues are transformed into personal challenges that individual women are expected to solve by, working hard, staying positive, and just buying the right stuff.
Hmm.
So this reflects what I call post-feminist Wanghong culture, where empowerment is celebrated, of course, but also depoliticized, aligned with these neoliberal ideas of choice and personal responsibility, and of course, meritocracy.
Right. You have such a good point there. Now, I could talk all day to you, Gia. I love talking to you. You've got such great uh points to share with us, and I hope that we get to do it a third time, a fourth time, a fifth time again in the future. But unfortunately, we've actually run out of time. But I'd like to know if there's anything you'd like to promote, like your future studies or current works, because I hope to have you again on the program because you're very informative. You said to me before we started recording you have a new book.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. So if you find, gender and digital culture in China interesting, especially this kind of tensions, so they do carry these feminist sentiments, but they kind of like, confirm this commodity culture. So my new book is coming, like talking about this kind of topics. So my new book is officially published by Routledge on the 3rd February 2026. And the book's title is Post-Feminist in China, the Global Aesthetic Label and Social Media. So welcome to check that out if you are interested.
Excellent, excellent. We'll make sure that this is posted before then so people can get ready for your book. And you said it was in February 2026, is that correct?
Yes, exactly.
Exactly. Excellent. Well, thank you for listening today to the IER Lab podcast. Once again, thank you to our guest, Jia Guo.
Thank you.
And until next time, this has been Walter Lee, and you may click on your next adventure